Hey everybody, it's Lavender Town, and today I'm going to be doing a Draw This Not That video about drawing the face and facial expressions. So I'm starting off with drawing two base heads, one for the do and one for the don't. The don't will be on the left side, and in this case I'm not doing a overly dramatic explanation of what the biggest mistakes are, but more of like easy, subtle mistakes to make, and things that aren't even necessarily mistakes, but just things that could be basically improved upon a little bit. So in the first case, I'm basically going to run through a couple different emotions, like the most common emotions that you might want to draw, and I'm starting with a neutral face. Now you can see that I'm just I'm sketching down some faces really quickly for these first little demonstrations, and for the first neutral face, there's really nothing wrong with it. It's very neutral, of course, but I also wanted to show a way that you can make a neutral face have a little more information on it. So one of the first things I did was I guided the eyes away from the camera. This is something I've talked a lot about in my last video on poses. Basically, you generally don't want the character looking straight at the camera, and when it's a neutral face, you can make your character look like they're thinking about something just by drifting their eyes away. Also, slightly furrowing the brow can do that as well. Making it look like your character's lost in thought rather than just making no expression at all makes them seem more real and more intelligent, which is generally a good thing. I also have a slightly more relaxed mouth. This is something that I didn't realize when I was first learning how to draw, but a perfectly straight mouth is actually something that most people have to put in effort to achieve, so a truly relaxed mouth usually slopes down a little bit. You can look at a picture of your own face, like look into a mirror with your face completely relaxed, and you'll typically see that your mouth isn't perfectly straight, so that's another thing you can do just to make the expression look a little more natural. And so a neutral face is probably one of the least interesting faces you could do, so I want to move on to a happy face, which is something that hopefully will come up a lot when you're drawing if you have happy characters. So on the don't side, I'm copying exactly the neutral face and changing just the mouth, which is something I did a lot back when I was first learning how to draw. I used to kind of think that the only things that were impacted by the emotion when it comes to a facial expression is mostly the mouth, whether they're smiling or frowning, and then the eyes and everything else stays roughly the same. But I want to show you how much more real and dynamic a face can be if you include other parts of the face in it other than just the smile. So as you can see, I'm scrunching up the eyes a little bit so that it looks like they're laughing. I'm adding in a little eye wrinkle, which can putting little wrinkles in certain parts of the face can definitely make it look more like they're having a real change in their facial expression, because of course whenever you're making a facial expression, your muscles are contracting and it's moving your skin in different ways. So having a little wrinkle here and there is actually a really good thing, and it won't make your character look old, which is something I worried about a lot when I was first learning how to draw. Another tip I want to give in general if you're planning out a face is before you get into the final draft of it, you can actually do these little circles and just practice with the eyes and the mouth what you really want it to look like. And you can just do these little like chibi versions over and over until you get a face configuration that you really like. I don't know if this is useful for everyone, but it is something that is kind of useful for me. As you can see, there's a lot of different ways to look happy. You can look like you're laughing, or like you're pleasantly surprised, or anything like that. There's a lot of different ways that happiness can interact with other emotions and become more complex. So basically you just want to scrunch up the eyes a little bit. That's generally an indicator of happiness. And another thing you can do is watch videos of people starting to laugh in slow motion. That will actually show you what happiness and surprise and all those kind of emotions look like. Like, watch people get pleasantly surprised in slow motion, and you'll be able to see every little detail of what that expression change looks like. So now moving on to the opposite of happiness and laughter, I'm going to talk about how to make it look like someone is sad, and not just a little bit sad, but actually crying. This is something that took a long time to learn how to draw properly. It's kind of it's an intense thing to draw. So a lot of the times when I was first learning how to draw, I did these very cartoonish faces where there were tears dripping down, and they just looked sort of frowny and unhappy in a very bland sort of way. But I've learned over the years that when someone's crying, it looks a lot more like a face of pain, not just general sadness, because obviously you're in some kind of emotional pain if you're crying usually. So the first thing you want to do is change up the mouth. Usually a frown is more associated with disappointment than real sadness. It seems like real sadness has more of a wince to it. You also really want to bring down those eyebrows, putting tension in between the eyes, and I usually squeeze a character's eyes shut if they're crying, especially if they're crying intensely. Also, there's some very simple things you can do with the tears to make them look more realistic. Obviously, the tears on the don't side are very not realistic. Generally, what I do is I show the tears building up in like a puddle by the eyes, and then they drip down the face following the curvature of the cheek, and then they pool up and gather up and then drop off of the chin. I like this style because it's neither super cartoony nor is it super realistic. It definitely shows a lot more on the face than a tear track would on a real person, but it's really up to you how cartoony or realistic you want it to look. And with intense emotions like this one of the best things you can do is just think about what it actually feels like in real life, and that can help guide you in showing it visually. Next up is another intense negative emotion, and it is anger. This is one of the most energetic emotions that you can have. And for the first one, I'm just doing the very most basic cartoony angry face. And you can see that it doesn't really have too much impact. It definitely looks angry because of the downturned eyebrows and these scrunched shut eyes and this angry mouth, but it looks a little bit tame, a little bit more like frustration. Whereas on the other side, I'm trying to really, again, think about what it feels like to be super angry and show a lot of asymmetry in this one, because asymmetry usually brings about more energy. And like I said, anger is energetic typically. So in this time, I'm going to put a wrinkle by the nose that shows disgust, which can be associated with anger a lot. I have an asymmetrical mouth that shows the teeth. Again, this is a very basic animalistic sort of indication that you are angry. It's like you're growling. And the do face in general just has a lot more emotions in it. Generally, you want your facial expressions to show more than one thing. It helps tell the story more. Seeing someone who's just angry, it could be anything. Maybe they got a parking ticket. Maybe they just stubbed their toe. Maybe someone threw them a surprise party and they hate surprise parties. It's hard to tell unless you have other emotions in them. So it's good to try to layer them as best as you can. Okay, so now that we've gone over some sketchy examples of how expressions can become more powerful with small changes made to them, I'm going to do two finished bust portraits of a character, both very happy, and on one side I'm going to fall into all the old traps that I used to when I was first learning how to draw, and on the other side I'm going to try to show the most intense expression of happiness that I can with my current ability. So starting off on the don't side, I'm having my character, again this is a stability problem, I'm having her facing both her face and her body straight forward towards the camera, and her eyes are fixated straight forward on the camera, and so immediately some of the energy is already lost. Even though I have a very energetic look on her face, the rest of her body and this pose just doesn't follow through with that. And I have this big wide open smile. It's okay, it definitely shows happiness, but she looks a little bit creepy. It's sort of like a very default kind of happiness. There's not a lot going on, and she looks a little bit silly because she's just got wide open eyes and a big smile, and that's about it. So on the other side, I'm going to try to incorporate her pose. I'm going to try to put some energy in there, and with her smile, I'm going to try to make it look more dimensional and interesting by showing her teeth and by showing more of a side angle of her mouth. I'm also going to change the pupils. Now this is something that is kind of just a hallmark of my style really, but I typically, when my characters are feeling a strong emotion, I change the shape of their pupils to match with that. I commonly use things like stars or letters when they're reading or something like that. That's just something I really like to do. And if you're doing a cartoony style, don't be afraid to change things and do weird stuff to show the emotions better. I find that it's a really fun way to draw. So I also brought up her hands so she looks really delighted and excited. I wanted this happy expression to have some sort of feeling of an exciting reveal of some kind. And of course the hair is flying up to increase that energy as well. Someone who does a really great job of showing emotion through hair is Miyazaki. If you've ever watched a Miyazaki movie, you might notice that when the characters are extremely angry, their hair actually puffs up like a hedgehog or something, and it's quite a cool effect. Yeah, I also have some cartoon symbolism above her head, like obviously a rainbow is like an extremely happy thing. You see this a lot in kids cartoons too, like things just showing up to show how happy a character is or whatever. And that's what I did a bit of here. So as you can see, just putting on a little bit more effort, a little more energy, you can really take that happy expression and make it an ecstatic expression, which can be really useful. And of course there's always a reason to sort of dial an expression back, but I find that if you do the expression as big and as extreme as possible, it's much easier to dial it back than to try to add more intensity in an expression after the fact. So knowing how to do the most extreme expression of happiness, anger, sadness, whatever, will really expand your artistic toolkit and make it much easier for you to tell stories with your art. And isn't that the dream, to be able to do that really well? It is for me anyway. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something from it. If you have any requests for what I do next, let me know. I'm always looking for new video ideas, especially because I'm uploading twice a week from now on. So yeah, definitely let me know. And thank you so much for staying till the end, and I will see you next week. Thank you to my patrons including Blep, Gaia, Scott Peterson, Weeb, Ellie Quiznak, Miss Misu, BB Dave, Kato Cat, Christy Stewart, Paynamel, Elizabeth Albin, Cal Pompone, Aaron Sawiki, Super Pixel, Rebel B, Taka, Disweet12, Harry Kitty Cat, Isabella Spooky, Lovely, Lachlan MD, Mystic, Enzo Jobert, Yo Boy ST, JJ Jade, Laura Buter, Angela Taylor, Liblibla, and Addie Visual. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you would like to become a patron, there's a link on the end card and in the description box.